I was thinking I might try and figure out a way to share. Well, I know how to share it, but whether I share it publicly or not. But for anybody who's curious, I might share just the Notion document so you can look if that's a thing that people are interested in. But it sort of starts with, this is how a podcast idea like this goes from if I've posted about it or tweeted it or whatever we're calling it these days, into like I want to actually follow through on it and sort of like figure out next steps. I would create a page in Notion, and especially for a podcast related thing, it would be under my list of shows I edit. I kind of just include any podcast related ideas I have for myself in there so that I can sort of account for it alongside things that obviously make me money versus something like this that wastes my time. It doesn't make me money. I don't know if you know you're not being paid for this, Tim, but sorry to
I'm not. Wait.
The Twitch affiliate, whatever it's called, bits and boops don't pay much at all.
Yeah.
But anyway, so this, and just kind of as a way to like keep myself accountable too, like if I go to look at this and just like, especially with a new project, I don't know if you're like me, but I tend to like pour into it, especially when it's new, because it's infinitely more exciting than work.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually
Right.
it becomes work, and then I go back to things that actually make me money.
Yeah. So do you have like a template that you always start with?
I still haven't really developed a template. I should. Like Notion is very good at supporting that kind of stuff, and you'd think I would. Although actually they're like, it's sort of, I hate their AI. Like they've got the little clippy guy in the corner here that is annoying. But the AI for like you start building out a thing like episode list guide I've got, and it kind of prompts you with things you've done in the past like that. And so that's the kind of stuff I like that Notion does. So just by way of example, I won't show you my client list necessarily, but like name of the episode number potentially, where the status is on it. Yeah, so the episode status, interview date, like if there's something scheduled. And this is basically built off of, I decided to just go all in on Notion for organizing this. Notion recently added, well, a while ago now, added like a form for like, oh, I definitely can't show that. Now I think about it. How do people do this? I don't know how people like live stream things that they're working on, because I don't want to like show people's information. I guess the form itself, I just want to show the submissions, responses. Okay, so we're back. So I built this form in based off of my silly idea in Notion here, where it's just an average form. If you've used a form builder before, it's just like their username, what should I call you, add email address, what level of interest do you have, do you have a mic, what days of the week, and any other information. Basically just a very simple, and again, because I already pay for Notion for work, that's why I would use this for my work. But a million other tools could be used. And then it pipes it into
this is the sort of thing that a lot of people would use Google Forms for. Because
exactly.
It's kind of generated or hook it straight up to a Google spreadsheet.
Yeah. Yeah, like a proof of concept idea where I don't need to spin up a whole, sign up for an app and pay for money for something to, where it's just like, especially in this case. I would actually, I mean, if someone's in Notion, a client or whatever, this is also, now that I've used it, it's definitely like powerful enough and professional looking enough to support, for an official project too, if it wasn't just Chris's silly vanity project. But then basically that allows me to, again, keep building this one page as sort of the home base for all things related to Why'd You Follow Me, this podcast that I'm sort of doing. And and then also within there, I just keep the quick links for stuff. So when I want to like share this form link to someone who might want to follow me, it's right there. The newsletter sign up with the, now that I figured out, thanks to you, the capitalization is important in tags somehow. And then, links to the YouTube channel, live version, the Twitch channel, etc. And then even just down to like, this is something that took me forever to do too, is just if I'm going to post about, or like online somewhere about going live or my plan to go live or when I am live, just having those pre-made, and then I change up like the last sentence so it's not like totally generic and just copied and pasted, but just eliminates some of those like, oh crap, brain fart moments where you're like, what should I do now? How do I post about this again? What are the links? And just kind of collect them all in one place. And then also just the newsletters that I've sent out already so that I have access.
In hindsight, it's not surprising that tag is case sensitive. At some point over the last few years, I can't remember where I learned it from, but I follow a bunch of accessibility people on social media. And I learned recently that the camel case is always preferred because screen readers will then read it out properly. If you
Oh,
don't have
okay.
the capital letters in there, screen readers will try and read it all as one word.
So like,
But
why
if
did you follow me would sort of be translated as a why did you follow me or whatever, like some sort of
exactly,
mumbo jumbo.
exactly.
Gotcha.
So in my head, like I will always camel case no matter the situation, just because I know it's generally better all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, which is funny. I tried to do that normally in URLs or hashtags or whatever, but then yeah, I wasn't sure how. I think because I just again like because I didn't have it ready to go. I quickly shared that with you, but then sent you the wrong inadvertently added you to your own
Right,
separate
right, right.
tag group.
Yeah.
But then what's interesting is within Button Down, like the email newsletter service, they recognize it sort of like one time as the same tag because I tried to I forget like
Oh,
delete it or something or move it or retype
okay.
it or I
So
forget.
there's an inconsistency.
Yeah, so something's goofy there,
Yeah,
but I mean that's very on a
interesting.
edge
That might
case
be worth
issue.
sending a letter about, because Button Down is a very small
Yeah,
organization and run by, as far as I know, just one guy who would probably love to know that.
yeah, he's super. Well, I pinged him once. Was like, I don't see a way to share this on Blue Sky because it was just like, and I'm sure I
Mm.
was one of 5 people who might have used that feature, and like
Right,
nobody on
right.
my newsletter will actually use it. And and then like within a day, he was like, yeah, added, got it,
Yeah,
or whatever. So
nice.
yeah, very cool. So that's where like these are sub pages basically. You could have them all embedded. Or like a big long page like you could do in Google Docs, let's say. But I like to have it sort of broken into sub documents, and I sort of organize it as I go, and then so that's where I end up with this page, which is basically just a spreadsheet, database, whatever, where I'm working on kind of like this is a just a capture from a voice memo I recorded before going in the shower or whatever. It's just like this is what I think this is
Hmm.
maybe about, and then thanks to Apple, they transcribe voice memos now automatically on iOS and I assume on
Hmm.
Mac OS. And so then I can just copy and paste that right in. I've got it there for when I actually want to work on potentially a trailer for this show. And then actually, thanks to Karam, just that's where I wrote down the pronunciation. I just recorded a call with him yesterday. He was the first one to sign up. I posted, I don't know if you saw, I posted like, hey, if you're interested, email to people
I
on
did see
the
that.
list, and then shockingly got like people who sent in a request right away, which actually that's I need to change. She had to reschedule, but yeah. So right away I was like scrambling a bit to try and get ready, but this is again going back to the original thing of like I won't do this unless I have some external accountability things.
Yeah.
Everything in me wanted to say, "Whoa, it's too soon. Sorry, I can't." But yeah, I just ran with it and said, "Yeah, let's meet." And so, anyways, I thought this episode I would just show a little bit of like how that recording, what the result of that recording was, and then sort of as far as we get into like sort of next steps with that, what I could possibly do with that, or sort of building out an episode 1, if that
Hmm.
sort of sounds all right.
Yeah.
And again, feel free to interrupt me, Tim, anytime you want. And then obviously, oh shoot, yeah, I keep putting people's email addresses. Sorry. See, I don't know how, like, I need like a duplicate version where I'm like, I mean, I guess I don't really need to see their email address all the time. Once I've got
Right.
it somewhere, I need to build these pages with that in mind. So, is that a New York fire truck going by?
Some kind of truck.
Like the, oh, by the way, the tweet about the plane or the thing getting here, it did actually arrive at like 5:30 last night. And you were,
That's
because you
funny.
were joking about planes as if I, didn't know
Yeah,
planes
yeah.
existed. But I think it was the case of like FedEx saying, like not having updated the thing in a while because all of a sudden it just like went from Tennessee to Calgary or
Oh, yeah,
wherever,
yeah,
it
yeah.
landed in Canada, instantly or whatever. But yeah,
Yeah.
it was a funny moment of like opening the door and the box being right there. I was like, oh, I
Huh.
guess planes do work. I knew. Oh yeah, and then so I had one more thing here. One of these pages that I've got listed here is just like the thing we're doing right now is a thing. What's that? Like an entry, so to speak, in this podcast series, and so I thought I'm going to document it as well a little bit along, so I remember if I need to what else has happened and where those videos
Hmm.
are. And again, this is another spreadsheet or table that I'm building out that I don't know what I might need or if I might need it. So today, showing Tim, say Riverside, recording, and Capabilities of Riverside for editing. Oh, there's a real New York siren too.
That is definitely
I'm aiming to be
probably an
the
ambulance.
small town hick to your big city, New York.
Yeah.
And potentially editing. Actually, yeah. And Descript we'll throw in there. Editing options. Okay, so let's just take this back to the webcam for a second. I need to build a... Actually, here, let's quickly build a webcam plus guest view that doesn't have any of my desktops. So just bear with me. What's the most New York thing you've done this week?
This week, I went up to look at an apartment at Harlem just today.
Harlem. See, that's where I think
it was interesting.
Tweeted one making you bigger. Oh, I hope this doesn't screw up the other view. Let me just double check here. Oh no, yeah, we can be back to little circles. Ooh, I like the rounded corner look. I should have done... How did I do that? I promise you I know what I'm doing here, but maybe Instagram square. Now that Instagram doesn't care about squares, we should go squares. Square. Where did I... Somehow I rounded my square. Corner radius. I guess you can't see this, eh? There we go.
Now you can see all the...
You can see the overlays. You can see the
boxes
changes.
And crap in my...
Oh.
We're getting ready to move, so my house is just full of everything.
So in this scene, we're going to get rid of... I need a background, I guess. New image overlay, shape, countdown, animated overlay. Let's just do a shape. It is the New York thing. I tweet a friend of mine lives somewhere in New York that she's like it's a U2 fan connection, but she often, whenever she would talk about going wherever, like going to work or going to wherever she was going, it always felt like it was like, because for me, a lot of those places, like you say, Harlem or whatever, it's like I only know it from a movie. Like it doesn't, I don't recognize it as a real place that people actually exist, but obviously, like I know they do. Yeah. I'm not like an idiot, but I'm not that small town. But yeah, it's just a funny like. Oh, there we go. Nice funky background.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been here for a long time, so it doesn't occur to me that all the time that people don't have any connection to a lot of these things. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And so people will frequently ask us about, is the subway actually safe? Well, yes, it's safe. Millions of people take it every day.
Yeah.
The crime. Is the crime terrible? I have not seen maybe seen one or two crimes in my 25 years of living.
How many murders did you see on your way to the Friends coffee set?
Yeah.
Coffee shop.
That's where all the murders happen.
Yes. Okay, there's our mediocre setup for... This is number 4. So what we use to record the conversation, and I will be using with everybody, is a Riverside. It's an app for like recording podcasts. You can do actually live streams with it. I have one client who she records a solo show, and she could do it on her Mac, like with an app like Audio Hijack, and just do it natively on the computer. She doesn't have to use something like this, but she records it into Riverside because that's just what she knows. And then occasionally she has guests, so she's kind of set up for guests, but she records all her solo, just, webcam and a microphone into a web app. And it kind of breaks my brain from 5 to 10 years ago that you would depend on a web app for
yeah, I was
recordings.
Having similar thoughts. Wait, a web app is doing this?
Yeah. And then even like screen recordings or demo, like I still don't know of any Mac power user who would use it in that way, but it can, I guess, is all. Mm-hmm. It kind of blows my mind sometimes.
And that's kind of part of something we touched on last week, which is the accessibility of all this. It's like, just get started, right? Mm-hmm. You improve the quality later if you want to. But the ideas and the content that's the more important thing than the technology.
Exactly. And even, so a lot of people get hung up on this, like, cause it's $15 a month, build 100, whatever. Like, I don't know what their monthly, that's on the yearly plan, but let's say it's $19 a month, I guess. And like, on the one hand, that seems like a crazy amount to spend every month on an app that you're using once a week, let's say 4 times a month, maybe for recording a podcast, if you're doing it that much even. And it is genuinely like $19 a month over the course of a year, 180 or whatever that is. And so I don't discount that, but also one way of looking at it, I guess, just for people who are cheap like me, is batch record. And so just set up all your recordings for 1 month and do a whole bunch of recordings that month and just pay the $19 and then unsubscribe for a while if you download all your recordings, etc. Whoa, somebody. Oh, I know what that is. I forgot I turned on the Twitch widget, whatever thingies.
That's funny.
Did you hear the little whoosh? Yeah, it was. I actually didn't even see what. I didn't get to see what it was. I need to go to my Twitch dashboard, but I'll save that for a second. Anyways, thank you for whoever did that. I think we just got rich, Tim. So you can probably quit your
perfect
day job. But yeah, $19 a month.
Affiliate? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. We're professional now, paid and professional. So look at it like that, where it's $19 a month or $19 one-time fee for the ability to record remotely in super high quality, and that's one way of looking at it, anyways. And it's because you save, like, especially compared to the way we used to have to do these kinds of things, you save so much time in fiddling with crap. So various apps and trying to record things properly or get your guests to record properly. It's like literally. You send them a browser link, they open it up, it verifies, well, just like anything you've done if you've ever done it online with a browser, but like where it records your camera, records your mic, and the host, you can like verify that they're using the right mic. It shows you all the details on their mic and adjust the gain or mute them or whatever, add new guests halfway through, etc. Makes it really, really almost dummy proof. That being said, when I hooked up with Crumb here on this recording, my camera would not work and I had to basically reboot my computer. So I can't be all like, it's so easy.
I know.
But that being said, it's, so this is the end result, is this sort of studio setup they have now, where basically this is the master recording that I had with him. And then email addresses all over the place. And then there's a bunch of stuff here where they're AI stuff. So I just actually, in full disclaimer mode, a long time ago, back when the developer of Riverside started developing it, he reached out to me and was like, hey, we're building this new thing. Would you want an account to help us test it? And I was like, no, I don't need an online version. Who's going to ever use an online version of recording? I only ever use, Audio Hijack locally on my Mac. I'm never going to use that. But he sent me an account. And so eventually I've had 3 or 4 years of free access to Riverside. So I guess indirectly they're sponsoring this episode. So I can't say that I'm paying for it right now in terms of that, but just for disclosure. But yeah, basically because of the way it works is his recording is locally recorded and then uploaded through the browser, and then mine does the same thing. And so you get a very high quality recording on both of our sides with individual full HD tracks. So his is whatever, it might show down here. I can't remember.
That can be reconfigured, as you can see in the
below. So like full 1080p on both of our sides, and then you can download the raw video. If they added a neat trick, which is very helpful, is if I was recording this with Tim, let's say, and then halfway through, whatever, Susie joined the call, it would align our videos so that Susie's video track has enough of a gap before she joins, so that you don't have to try and figure out how to line it all up, or audio track for that matter. So you can download the two individual, like exactly the full video file from him and then from me, and throw that into Final Cut Pro or Adobe Premiere or whatever you want to edit with. And same thing so this is what I do with clients, is I just go in, grab the raw audio exactly as recorded, so I can just sort of get the best or untouched version of the audio track, and then take that into my case Logic Pro for editing. But then they also have added over the years, as every company has, AI tools or whatever you want to call it, just basically editing tools and automatic generation of stuff for you. And this is what's kind of blowing my mind, because I'm, again, very skeptical of editing. Like, again, like you would appreciate this. Some other folks might be like, well, of course you can do that. But like 2 1080p HD video files in your browser and just scrubbing through that like it's not a big deal is still mind-blowing to me. And it should be to everybody, but I guess I understand that some people have grown up with this now.
Yeah.
So not only that, but it does generate like a transcript. I think this is the unedited version, maybe. Transcript, and again, because it's 2 tracks on their end, it's very easy for it to tell who's talking. Even when we talk over each other, it knows what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this is going to play, it will play, but if you guys, well, I guess just pronunciation. Yeah, you can hear that, right?
Yep.
And then even time, like I can, on my Magic Trackpad, I can zoom in and out on the timeline, and it's arguably it's not faster, but it's pretty close to being faster than like Final Cut Pro, which is like, the expensive Apple $400 editing app that uses
the thing
my
you
Mac
buy
Studio.
brand new computers to use.
Exactly.
Right.
So I'm kind of regretting spending the extra money on Mac Studio that when it's all being done in the browser anyways. And so I did.
Is it actually being done in the browser, or is it being done on remote servers and delivered to your browser?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I have, luckily, if you don't have a high enough speed bandwidth, I guess you would be, because I was thinking like I could probably buy a somewhat loaded up Mac Mini and get the same performance on this kind of stuff anyways. Mm-hmm. Don't quote me on that because I haven't tested that.
On this like quality of platform.
Exactly. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. And whether you want to spend the money, I guess, upfront on hardware or spend the money on monthly on software, I guess is maybe the part of the debate, I guess, that would be worth having.
But one of the great debates of our day.
But these days you are having to almost pay for the software monthly anyways is the problem. So you're kind of, because again, that's where they get you, because the recording quality is really good and easy. And so then if they build in the editing tooling, that's, yeah. So let's go back to, actually, yeah, I'll just go back into that edit. Or actually I have a saved edit, or I think full episode. I think I already, here, I'll show all. So in addition, just while I'm here, in addition to, of course, editing the whole thing, you can have it do, they call it magic clips, where it basically just, generates a bunch of clips for you from the episode that it thinks are super interesting and are worth sharing. And then it also automatically creates a, TikTok Reels, whatever style version,
right.
vertical formatted. Unfortunately for this episode,
So at least with those type of surveys, everything is in one place.
I've found personally with a lot of stuff, unless you've got super dynamic people who are just like keyed up and like performer mode, these kinds of tooling, this kind of tooling doesn't work great for the average, I guess I'll say, like tech nerd podcast in terms of finding really.
In terms of creating compelling clips.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I use it on, there's a Learn with Jason. He does a live stream, like an 1.5 hour long live stream. And I'll use it to sort of find what it thinks are good moments. But even then it's very like hit and miss as far as like, you can't just have it do this and then export and be done. Cause it's, it'll sometimes chop up halfway through a sentence and doesn't really recognize.
Right. But I got to imagine that if it can pull out 12 things that it thinks might be interesting, half a dozen of them might be close.
Yeah.
And 3 of them might be ready to go, and that saves you a heck of a lot of time.
Exactly. And that's where I think lots of people get sort of turned off with the AI thing, because it's kind of like you do the auto-generated version, you're like, oh, this didn't really work. And like I've been in the same boat. But then if you just push a little deeper and be like, okay, but could I, add a bit more at the beginning, chop up this thing in the middle that it added, and like definitely quicker than like trying to rewatch a whole 90-minute or however long podcast for sure. Just as a starting point. Although I did have it like, because you can sort of tag when you say generate magic clips, you're like topics to highlight. And so it's presumably looking at the transcript and saying, when does he say this? So I remembered in the episode, I referenced Zach Leatherman's Leavendy project a couple times. Mm-hmm. And so I just typed Leatherman just to see if it would just give me spit out clips about Zach. But that was the second batch here. And it somehow didn't find those clips at all when I was mentioning Zach. So hit and miss, but so from this original recording of 52 minutes, then within Riverside, I made this edit that I would say is just going back to the purpose of the show, primary output is going to be an audio podcast for me, and that's where it would live. And that's like, if I had to cut everything else out, anything else extra because of time or whatever, I'd like to keep the audio version going, and I don't worry about video at all. Video is kind of like a bonus. And so what this particular edit, I guess, I can't see the edit, so I was hoping it would let me, maybe just go back to, yeah, it's exported already. Oh, there I can zoom, edit. I'm hoping to be able to do with minimal effort a video version that I could throw on YouTube on my, Lemon Productions YouTube channel as like a demo of this is what a podcast can look like without having to spend a whole bunch of time. And the fact that I can like build this within the browser, this took me maybe 15, 20 minutes, and then I could actually punt it over to YouTube straight from here if I really wanted to. And more or less from kind of like what we're doing right now with this live stream, but more or less like live to tape kind of recording. And and it's good enough anyways for the purpose of what I'm doing. It wouldn't necessarily match up against whatever, heavily produced YouTube show, but mainly for the people who do watch or listen to podcasts through YouTube, it's a way of them keeping up with the show as well as potentially finding some new people who,
a lot of I don't say a lot because I've kind of cut back on my podcast listening, but a bunch of the podcasts I listen to have added like YouTube parallel releases over the past year or two, and none of them have I certainly haven't transitioned from audio to the video version, but I have learned about other podcasts through YouTube that I now consume through YouTube.
Do you pay for YouTube Premium?
I do pay for. I started paying for premium during COVID just because the number of ads just really rocketed up.
Oh yeah,
during COVID, and so it went from like 1 or 2 to 5 or 6. I was like, I consume enough YouTube that I'll make that one of the things I pay for, and it's kind of expensive, but it's for me it's worth it.
Because in the States there's a difference between YouTube Premium and then YouTube like TV or something, right? That's a whole separate, like $100 a month.
I don't do YouTube TV. I just do the YouTube Premium, which is ad free. Basically, that's the biggest perk is ad free YouTube.
Right.
And then there's other perks like being able to download stuff and watch it offline.
Yes. Yeah. So primarily you're listening to podcasts, but occasionally you would watch a podcast. It's kind of the 75, 25, something like that, or whatever the exact.
And it's like I'll watch a podcast when I'm sitting in front of the TV, basically. Like doing something else in my lap, but the TV's on. And then audio podcasts are for running and doing errands and chores around the house and stuff like that.
Riding the subway while you avoid murders.
Yes. Only murders in the subway.
Spin-off series. So like just to even show how like because of the transcription it does, and then these like chapters that it added, I didn't do that, and it's fairly accurate. Like again, you'd probably want to massage it a bit for accuracy or whether it's actually important to AI's influence in coding. Like that was actually a thing we talked about, so that'd be interesting to keep as a chapter. And like this one, for example, evolution of I would maybe change that to be like how he views social media versus like it wasn't like a commentary on social media engagement, but like again, it gets you 90, 80, whatever % of the way there where you don't have to start from scratch and think of it on your own. That's like half the battle. So, and I could see, especially if this is your only podcast you do, you might love digging into all that metadata details yourself. But again, because of my job, it's my brain by the time I'm coming to that part is like, I don't want to write things. So that's where I would, going back to this one, let's see. While we're recording the conversation, I have a few things I've written down or gotten from his website about him, and just in terms of how I record an interview with somebody. I kind of wanted to go in fairly blind-ish in terms of like not being totally aware of who these people. I could do a lot more research, obviously, but both for laziness sake as well as just sort of keeping the conversation so that I'm new and I'm not assuming I know stuff about somebody that the listener also won't know about, and kind of keeping that perspective as a valid one. And there's a few points in the conversation, like I won't play it all obviously right now, but where I just stopped and said, okay, I'm trying to think of where I want to go next, and look through my notes or just thinking about what we talked about and, referencing stuff. I asked him at one point, like, is there anything else we needed to talk about that you wanted to reference? And he mentioned something about wanting to do podcasts and something he talked about earlier that I'd forgotten about. And so then it gives us the opportunity to just sort of stop and think. Whereas obviously live streaming, I mean, you can do that, but or even a straight to tape sort of recording, it's a lot more difficult to do that kind of stuff because you're not. So I often have to remind clients, especially those who don't do any sort of live stream or recording other than just for me to edit, that feel free at any point just to stop and say, I'm having a brain fart. I can't remember what I was going to say. Chris, edit this out or whatever. And it is funny how our brains kind of like get tricked. A lot of people's, anyways, I've found with podcasting where they hit record and there's like, now there's pressure and they have to do it.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
Even though it's
yes.
like you're literally paying someone to edit for you. So you can, fumble or stop or whatever. So
yeah, performance anxiety is a thing everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, anything, I've sort of jumped around a little bit, but any questions or anything that's jumped out at you, or I think I should?
No, it all makes sense because, like, especially like this platform is very sophisticated, but it seems very clear that, like, what's happening with technology for this kind of stuff is the barrier to entry is getting lower all the time, and the level of quality you can produce with very little experience is getting higher all the time. There's always going to be that upper echelon of, oh, this was really well produced, but the percentage of podcasts or any sort of content that's being produced with minimal experience is like, oh, okay, that's fine, I can consume that. It's not, it looks fine, it sounds fine, the pace is right, the volume is right, the editing is fine. As long as it's consumable, you can publish it and not feel like you're missing out on an opportunity to share what you've got to share.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like some of the things just even within this tool, or it could be many others like this, obviously, of course, like we've talked about, but like they do have AI tooling to smooth out speech where it'll automatically remove filler words or automatically mute people. So it'll try and figure out who the primary speaker is and mute the other person just in case their whatever dog barks or a siren goes by or whatever. And then even this magic audio thing is basically going to enhance it, remove a bit of the echo if there is, kind of clean up the audio on it. I would never use that for clients who, like, it's not to the point where I would just hit that and be done for client work. And even for this, I think I applied it to his track because you can see even in here, like his is this quite a bit lower just because he came in less hot, less volume appropriate, whereas mine is quite loud or maybe more accurately as far as where it should be. But again, when we were having the conversation, I didn't pick up on that. And that's often what happens is it sounds fine because of various settings or whatever. And so that basically allows me to just hit that button, and then the YouTube version that it exports is going to be more or less fine and can be, like you said, presentable and not missing much. And even the tools where, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, like you can within here, just to do a very quick little version of this or demo of this, like you can add images, you can add overlays, you can change, like, so AI actually, their tool automatically adjusted the layout. So like when we're both kind of talking versus, I can't find one where it cuts to there. Versus when he's on a longer, rant or answer or whatever, and I'm on, that's all automatically sort of setting up those scenes. I didn't have to go through and manually do that. And those are little things that help. Because like in the, 2 years ago, let's say, or whatever, I would have just recorded a whole video. It would have been the two heads talking and that's it. Cause it's too hard to go through and go back and forth or whatever. Whereas it just adds a little bit of interest and keeps your attention because it's not the same shot the whole way through. So, or adding music or anything else, uploading, if you have a pre-show or a post-lude thing that you always put onto the podcast or whatever, all that kind of stuff is very accessible. So I still find myself scrubbing through this and being like, how can this exist? This is.
Yeah. But I mean, you have this, but you also do need to take, like, if you want it to be as good as it can be, you need to take the time to be like, oh, this jump cut or this cut to the single person should be a second sooner, or like for the sake of rhythm and pacing, that stuff still needs to be fine-tuned by a human.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So one little, what would you call it? Like what am I trying to say? A template or an idea for the show is I was having, because the conceit is, or the idea is like, why did you follow me on social media is sort of the idea of the show. Obviously, we're not going to spend an hour long talking about all the reasons why someone followed me, and I'm not really that interested in it. It's just sort of a silly jumping off point. But to have, I don't know if you've listened to Conan O'Brien's podcast ever or seen, it's like Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend or something.
It's another podcast I've only seen on YouTube.
Yeah, I've seen like clips on TikTok, I think, or whatever,
Yep.
and I've never really watched the full or listened to a full episode. But he starts off every episode with like, my name is famous person and I'm feeling something about Conan O'Brien, like an insert feeling here. And so I was thinking of jumping off that idea of just like, hi, my name is, Tim or whoever. I followed Chris because, and then the reasons why. And it was actually really neat because with Crumb here on this episode, I thought he was just from Blue Sky. Like that's sort of where this idea sort of started off for me as a little Blue Sky joke. And he was actually referencing back to Twitter like 5 years ago when my friend Justin Jackson had tweeted about a podcast editor. And so then he had followed me at that point. And then, through also following me on Mastodon, then when Blue Sky came around, anyway, like just all the tools to like find who you follow on other platforms. And he said like he doesn't post much. He doesn't interact at all really. But then the opportunity came up to actually be a guest on a podcast like this, and so then he jumped at the opportunity. And so kind of like an interesting way of finding out where people are from, which is exactly why I wanted to sort of do this.
Definitely, especially now, because it's like, as you say, there's Blue Sky and there's Threads and there's Mastodon, and we're all kind of like not wanting to be on Twitter, and like, so the culture is shifting and it's getting broader.
Yeah, that's actually, it's funny because I even just doing this live thing, I was like, oh, maybe I should post this on, like my Twitter account is there, but I've deleted all my tweets and I just use it. There's one client I have who's very active on Twitter. And so I just in the interest of keeping some awareness that I exist as a podcast editor alive, I kind of use it to more or less troll them. But yeah, I was like, do I post on Twitter? And like, you can get into moral reasons or just like annoyance at the platform reasons or just too many platforms too. I haven't decided yet, but that's where I like, because Twitter was the original one for me and probably for you as far as social media that you really invested in. I do feel like I want to hear from someone who is on there who hasn't made the jump either. And so whatever, at some point I'll solicit or whatever it's called for guests maybe from there too. But we'll see if it lasts long.
Try not to shame them too much.
Yeah. That is the whole, it's a funny thing, even being up here in Canada, not to get political, but like I support a lot of the reasons why people would ditch Twitter, and especially in light of this, now what's going on literally like as we record this or whatever. But it also is like I'm removed from it enough that it's not like, but although I don't know, with Trump trying to like take over Canada, it's all of a sudden it's like, oh no, now we have to deal with our politicians reacting to him, and it's like, oh my gosh,
It's awful. It's awful. Anyway, but I know there's a lot of baggage that comes with moving away from something like Twitter that A, you've been on for a long time, and B, you probably have a decent social, not you personally, but people they have big social networks, on places like Twitter, and it's hard to give that up. Yeah. But I would encourage people to try.
Yeah, I saw, I don't know if she's someone I followed and also had a client I worked with a little bit, Marie Poulin, who's like big in the Notion community actually, but she walked away from like 40,000 followers on Twitter, and for a variety of reasons.
I'm sure this isn't everybody's experience, but a lot of people, like I see testimony, like posts from people who are like, I walked away from 250,000 people on Twitter and I get more activity over here.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because those larger networks have been tuned to benefit the network and not necessarily, we as the user any longer. Like it used to be, I used to get constant notifications from Twitter, and I remember the day they stopped coming, and that was the day that the algorithm kicked in.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Totally. And it's like, it's I don't know. We can go along for that one too. I'm just going to load up my Twitch dashboard here while I think of it, so I can see.
Yeah, it's complicated, but it's also really interesting and cool because federation as a concept is like kind of going back to the roots of, I have a thing, I can publish it on my website, and now I can give people even more different ways to subscribe to it, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think having control over that, and like for us nerds, developers, whatever group you fall under, like more than just like you love, being on your phone, I guess. Like I can see it in my
Yeah.
kids too, where there's like they're happy to just sit and consume, and they don't really have any interest in putting stuff out there yet, which is fine. I'm not like
Right.
desperate for them
No,
to
no.
become an influencer or something. But yeah, like there's that kind of vibe, and that's fine. Like you kind of just go wherever your favorite creator happens to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, for those of us who enjoy sharing stuff,
But it's also going to get interesting when like even the people who aren't into the sharing or the creating, like hand your kids an RSS reader and say you could subscribe to a website here and not have to go to the website. You can subscribe to somebody's social feed and not have to go seek out that feed.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they can build their own platform that
Yeah.
only shows them what they want to see instead of what the algorithm or whatever platform that they're on wants them to see.
yeah. And as those tools, this is way off topic from anybody looking to build a podcast, but I mean, podcast is one of those things where you can subscribe to that in an RSS reader. That
100%.
you also, as those tools get more savvy to that it's okay to like subscribe, whatever that means. It's not even necessarily an RSS feed at that point to someone's TikTok account or their Instagram account, maybe in some way. Because even I've seen tools adding, like at the time it was like Twitter. I could follow Chris Coyer on Twitter through Feedbin, let's say, or whatever RSS reader, and it wasn't the full Twitter experience, but it was kind of like I think at that point technically it probably was an RSS feed that they were allowing through.
I think so.
But even YouTube has like an RSS feed for a channel that you could subscribe to indirectly, backdoor kind of way, and so it allows you to sort of have like a safer version of the internet, as well as if you can sort of have ways to hack the platforms a bit. And because definitely as a parent of kids, trying to navigate that whole world is just, bonkers.
Certainly.
So that's,
Yeah. And every time you can separate this is the reason they don't want you to do it, but when you can separate the content from the platform, then you're also separating yourself from all the monetization that those platforms do.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Which is why
So, like
they're,
food blogs in particular are a nightmare right now because monetizing anything on a basic website is very difficult. And so
Yeah.
every food blog is just smeared with ads. But collecting that stuff via RSS can strip a lot of that out, which may seem like a problem for the content creator until you start thinking about other ways to monetize that stuff, which is similar to publishing a podcast, which is similar to creating YouTube videos. It's like the platform is secondary to the content that you're creating. You need to figure out how to best monetize it.
yes.
If that's your goal. If it's not your goal, then just put it out there on every single platform you possibly can and let people pull it the way that they want to pull it.
Yeah. Yes. You have a blog post series you started on that, I think, right?
I have one of my vague New Year's resolutions is to start putting more thoughts down on paper. And so, yes, I showed you a blog post that I haven't shared with anybody else. Because it's not great, but I just wanted to put some thoughts out there. I mean, it definitely published it, but I haven't
Oh, gotcha. Like
you were the only person I told about it.
Gotcha.
And it definitely needs to be better. But putting something out there, and we have an RSS feed. Nobody subscribes to it, but it's there. And so that's fine. I just publish it on our blog, and then I'll just keep publishing it, and I'll keep,
refining. Yeah.
Yeah. Do more.
Cool. And that's, just create, have fun. That's, I think, like the underlying, going back to without dipping too far into politics, the underlying message that I keep hearing from a lot of people, especially US folks, who are like, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? And if you're overwhelmed, just find a way to create. And that's create art, create podcasts, create whatever. And especially if it's...
Don't just sit and consume.
Yeah.
Create.
And eat your feelings. Let's...
Eat them a little bit. That's okay.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for that reassurance. I don't feel bad about all the stuff I eat today. So just going back to the podcast briefly here for step back off of the tangent train. So out of Riverside, like I was showing, you can download the audio only or videos of each track that each person has recorded for you. You can also download it in a grid, so you can just have a version that you would then throw into an editor if you're comfortable with. But basically Riverside or similar tools give you a whole bunch of options that way. They also create these silly little auto-generated shareable moments, which are always kind of
Yeah.
that's okay.
I mean, this platform really seems to like smooth out a lot of bumps that are tricky for people who are just getting started,
Yeah.
or for people who don't do it as a living full time.
Yeah.
Because like I haven't done a lot of this sort of thing, but my understanding is that getting multiple recordings is oftentimes tricky because you have to do it on your own local computers and you have to make sure they're both running, and then you have to know how to export them correctly. Whereas something like this, it's obvious and clear to see that when you're doing it at the same time, if something's wrong or not, and then this one app is just doing all of that consolidation for you.
Yeah. And as long as you're like,
That's
just
cool.
like Tim and I, if you're an elder on the internet and you sort of plug your nose and forget that it's a browser tab that you could just hit Command W and accidentally close and thereby end your recording.
I love that it's a browser tab. It's so cool.
It is amazing, but sometimes I
This is the
close
dream
tabs.
of the web as platform, right?
Exactly.
You should be able to do everything on the web.
Yeah. Which is funny that, so now we're going to tangent again, but like the whole TikTok ban, I was like, someone just posted too, like today I saw like the web version of TikTok is actually very usable. That's how I often actually end up on like distraction tangents on TikTok. It's just on the web and fully like,
Fully
messages,
capable.
activity, upload videos, edit your
Nice,
video,
nice.
all that stuff
Yeah.
is there. And they never promote it at all, which is understandable. They want you in the app. But the fact that
Yeah.
unlike, it took Instagram, 5-10 years to build a web version, like that was where you can actually, and even still, it's pretty limited as far as what you can upload. Whereas
Yeah.
TikTok is just kind of like, whatever you say about TikTok and spying and et cetera.
Yeah.
The fact that they're embracing the web as a platform the way they are is actually pretty incredible. So, speaking of another app that actually embraces, so Riverside is a recording tool and has been adding in editing tooling. Descript is a tool that started as a web and desktop app for editing, but didn't have recording. And so they've since added recording. They bought a company and kind of like melded them together. So now you can do recording as well as editing. And Descript is something that's a tool that's, you have a timeline view, but it's primarily built around the idea that you can edit in the text view. And so much like you'd edit a Word or Google Doc, you could just like delete this section and then it's gone. And it somehow does that in the version, the audio as well. And so,
Wait a second. You're editing the text transcript and the video version at the same time?
yeah, so I downloaded the Riverside separate tracks of video, just the full video 1080p version from each of us, threw them up into Descript again. Like I'll keep doing this because it's just like, it blows my mind. Like I'm sending up, I don't know, whatever it was, 5 gigabytes of video between the two files. And it just like
through a browser.
through a browser tab, no problem. And, and they do have a Mac app.
Funny. That is very funny.
But it's just like for anybody who's back in the day where you're like, oh gosh, I hope this file uploads and finishes before it times
right.
out.
I hope this 728
Yeah,
byte JPEG will upload to my CMS.
exactly. It's over a meg. Oh shoot, what do I do?
Oh no.
Yeah, it's still, I think it's good to have some of those like holy crap moments, but I'll try not to do that the whole stream long. But yeah, so like it does allow you to basically, I'll just play this. Person is Zach Leatherman with 11D. Speaking of Zach, so now I could actually like very easily copy and then find. I think, where am I going here? Yeah. So I've got 2 windows open there. It'll find me every reference to Zach Leatherman or whatever in this recording, or if you want to move something around, or it works a lot like you would think a Word document would work, except you're also making changes. Because like at the beginning here, for example, I'm talking about we're just sort of setting up the recording, and then at some point here, where is it here? Yeah, my name is, so I can just hit delete, and then now it just starts there.
So my name is.
And like,
Right.
which, again, if you've never spent hours staring at a Final Cut or whatever screen to wonder where was that in the edit that he said this,
Right.
just scrubbing
Right.
through an hour, like
Yeah.
again, the kids
Yeah.
these days,
It's
I
like-
had to go uphill both ways to school.
It seems like a transformative moment for you in along the same lines of the transformative moment I had when I discovered that the browsers had added the inspection tools.
Right.
which
Like,
meant if nobody understands that, like I've been a web developer for over 25 years, and at some point, like 15 years ago or so, they added developer tools into the browser so you could right click on something in the page and be brought immediately to a view of the source code of the thing that you clicked on.
yeah. So like what I'm showing here, where it's like,
And then to another extension, you could click on a thing that like you're clicking on now and see the CSS or the styling rules that apply to that thing.
yeah,
And it's exactly the same experience of, oh, I no longer need to hunt and peck to see where this thing is in my code. Right?
apparently I can't make 1280s too high of a font weight. But anyways, that idea of like being able to quickly this quickly eclipsed my brain as far as like what I can do in here or whatever, but I still can appreciate I know it enough to be able to do dumb screenshots of websites.
So
making
the
it look
frustration
like
you had of like, I need to find this moment in my recording was the same as my frustration of, okay, where's the style for this thing I need to change? And I've got a CSS file with thousands of lines of code in it, and the inspector tool lets me fly right into the thing I need to get to.
Yeah.
And
the problem
this
is
does
now,
that for you.
Tim, explain this to me. This is a web browser tab that I'm in. It's an Arc
Yeah.
browser, Chrome based. I can't right click though and inspect the elements anymore.
Oh no.
I can't do it anymore. What's happened?
Sorry. Presumably you could use this in a regular browser, right?
Yeah. That's where Chrome was actually, he was talking about this like Vercel's V0, like for app building or website building, you know, build an app to record a video call, and how you can like, oh, it's going to make me sign in. Never mind. Go too far down that rabbit hole, but
yeah, all that sort of stuff is getting quote unquote easy.
Yeah.
You know, it's never as easy as you want it to be, but to get started, again, it's the same thing. They're bringing down barriers and making the threshold of acceptable a lot easier to reach.
Yeah. Yeah. So with this, I might do if I can have time to do it, if I can delay it long enough to edit before I would want to put this out, and I could do it on a live stream. I might even without Tim here, or if you want to just sit there and watch or whatever, but I know it'll take twice or three times as long as if we keep talking while I'm trying to edit. But I'll maybe try and do on a future live stream an edit of either this episode or maybe the next one live, just so that people can sort of see how it works a little easier. But suffice to say, like, this is where one of the really cool things about Descript that makes it, and like Riverside would be sort of similar in terms of its automation of this, but let's just say, what was I doing? Was that Leatherman? I want to find those two references to Zach Leatherman, and I could like Zach. Oh, that's me saying it. I could just highlight this and then where is it here? Duplicate to a new composition, and so then I'm going to find the other one. Like even Zach. Zach's ears are hopefully buzzing. Duplicate to last used composition. And so now up here, I've got this multiple compositions where this is the full recording, and then this is the clips where I'll just call it the Leatherman episode, let's say. And now I could just export this if, you know, I massaged it, added an intro or whatever. And very easily I've got a highlight version of every time Zach Leatherman is mentioned. And so obviously you could hopefully extrapolate from that you could make a way more interesting episode. Nothing against Zach. He helped me a ton trying to troubleshoot my website when I was trying to run 11D. But whatever the thing is that you wanted to talk about a bunch, and then from there also have it build a much more interesting layout of it that you would, you know, be more appealing to somebody to watch actually. So, but it's a way that I can, and actually because it's web-based, this is the really cool part, is that this little, you know, whatever 2 clips here, I can just publish this and on Descript's website, and someone has to know the link, like it's a very obscure random link, but I'll put this in the show notes for this episode when it lives on YouTube. But that link basically is like, you could then watch that and be like, oh, actually I want to, you could leave a comment. Here's the thing I think should be deleted.
Just like a Google Doc, you can share it in the same way.
Yeah, but it's video, Tim. Do you know? Is this
I
not
do.
blowing your mind?
I get it. I get it.
I'm gonna be the old guy
That's
in
good
the
stuff.
like the old folks home
Yeah.
when my grandkids come and like,
Yeah.
did you know they can record
Yeah.
video?
Right. Yeah. And this actually answers a question of mine, which is so like one of the podcasts I watch on YouTube is just two guys talking about Magic the Gathering. And they're very well edited in a way that keeps things going. It's very clear. The conversation is just the two guys I watch are really great, which is mainly why I watch it, because they're very good at bouncing off each other and they're very good at speaking very clearly and very few stumbles and like. But as I'm watching, I'm seeing cuts in the video, quick cuts, because obviously a system like this is taking out all those pauses and nothing words and all that kind of stuff, which just make it so much easier to consume because you're not sitting through the well, I didn't, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where, again, my transition from like primarily audio only editing, which is, in my view, like easy, but also allows, you can cover over a multitude of sins where, the gap that I just had there, I could have cut that out and nobody is the wiser that it existed. Whereas obviously in video, if you don't properly cover that, like a movie or a TV show obviously just cuts to a different angle or a different camera shots or a live audience or whatever, depending on the kind of show it is. If two people talking, there generally isn't like B-roll that you're cutting to just like the forest outside or whatever. And so
But
video makes it much harder to do some of that. But we've all gotten, I'd argue,
we've all gotten used to it.
yeah, thanks to TikTok, Reels, etc.
Yeah.
YouTube itself has become less
Right.
polished.
Like a jump cut in a video from one person to the same person is no longer shocking is the wrong word, but like no longer startling or doesn't make us bump. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's I'm sure thousands of hours of YouTube content where 10 years ago they told you like you're an idiot if you have a jump cut on the same person and your channel will tank if you do that. Like that, it was that level of like disgust by YouTube, or editors anyways, or whatever in that world. And now it's just like, that's just what you do. Cause it's easy.
Because I think like YouTube is proving that the audio is the most important part. The audio needs to be seamless. Get rid of the stuff that is dragging it down and making it slow. Even if it makes your video jumpy, it doesn't matter because the audio is what people are listening to.
Yeah.
Like that's the primary thing that's going into their brain.
Which is a funny one for, so I feel like I'm having deja vu that I've talked to you about this, but maybe this is on a different podcast. But like if I take a photo, let's say I have Chris Coyer and Dave Rupert and I'm their photographer. I take a photo and I Photoshop and an airbrush Dave to like look 20 years younger. People would be like, what did you do to Dave? He looks younger. It's fairly obvious or whatever. But when I edit the podcast and let's say I cut out Chris Coyer stumbling over his words all the time, or maybe he repeats the, or says the, or whatever repeatedly, and I cut that out, am I doing the Photoshop thing or am I, because then it got funny. Like nobody's actually really upset about it. But it's just, it was an interesting question, like sometimes think about, because then let's say someone is like listening to that podcast and they're like, I should hire Chris, which rightfully so, they should hire Chris.
Chris isn't that well spoken.
Yeah, but then he comes and talks and he's like, stumbles, and they're like, what's going on? I listened to the podcast and he's like this. And anyways, just a funny thought that if you spend too much time editing podcasts, I guess you have. I'll just show you quickly, like in Descript here. So like this idea of removing, shortening word gaps, right? So like, again, there's no way, I think I'm just highlighting one section. That's why it's doing this. It's like automatically, it's just going to say every gap more than 3 seconds, shorten it to 1 second. And then in this case, there actually isn't, it looks like, I think, cause I already edited it a little bit in, if I did it. Yeah. So like there's these points it found where there's a gap more than 1 second and shorten that 2 seconds. And then I could just hit shorten and it'll just automatically done.
Yeah.
And, or like removing filler words, like all the it'll just, and you can choose like, do you want every word like that or something or sort of, or,
Yeah. It's funny. And like the reducing gaps thing is a thing that's in podcast players.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So if you might like, sometimes I'm a purist. I'm like, well, no, that's natural. Like I'll just keep picking up Chris and Dave, but like Dave has a pause where he's like thinking of what he wants to say and it adds to like the drama of that moment maybe.
Yeah. And I don't turn it on for the same reason. It's like, it's part of the performance and I want the whole performance.
Yeah. Whereas, some people are like, please cut that out for me. It's like, every podcast player will do if you want it to these days. So, yeah, it just makes for an interesting. I like that one little side note here. Descript calls their AI bot Underlord, so it's kind of like it's not your overlord, it's your underlord, it's your servant, which is kind of like a comforting way of referring to your.
Sure, they hope at least.
Yeah, but just for an example, like what I will do for this episode is I'll use. This is why I put them all into Descript, because it's just like I can hit this draft a YouTube description, and I wouldn't copy and paste this right in, but it's like in this episode, got his name spelt wrong. Of course, I need to fix that. It gives me a summary, pulls in the chapters automatically, and I can just like edit that for clarity and make sure it's accurate, and then paste that into the YouTube tab or whatever, and I'm done. I don't have to think about what it actually, because it, again, which AI bot do you want to worry about? Like if I don't do it, YouTube is going to automatically do it for me and figure out, they won't show you the chapters necessarily, but they're going to have sort of like categories of what goes on in that show and assign it to you by their AI bot, or I do it myself. And I'd rather do it myself, I guess, just to make sure it's somewhat accurate, given how, All right. We've gone slightly over our hour mark. Any final, I just noticed Econ, I don't know how you say that out loud, but that was who I got the little notification for. So thanks for following if you're still out there along on Twitch. Any final thoughts, questions?
I don't think so. I think it's good. This all makes sense.
So we got, we showed you Riverside, capables of Riverside, and we kind of touched on, we got kind of the things we were going to hopefully do. So yeah, like I said, maybe next time, and you're free to hang out and watch, or maybe be the whatever voice in my ear as I edit, but definitely it's not going to be the most interesting conversation to try and have while editing. But for people who want, I know Jamie was here last time. She'd been asking me about she'd love to watch me edit something so that kind of understand what goes on and why. And so whether that's the next episode.
Sometimes I wish there was a Twitch for working. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like you can do that on Twitch, but it'd be nice if there was a platform that was a little more focused on like watching people work, either A, because it'll be interesting and educational, or B, because it's nice ambient content a lot of the time.
Yeah. And I've tried doing that with like some clients where, so it's bugging me. I think I'm a little misaligned. There we go.
Oh, that's bugging you, but the different border radiuses aren't bugging you?
Oh no, now I'm off here. There we go. Wait, let me get this. What is, because it's just like a thing. Okay, so what do we want? 30? Is that 30 are we happy with?
I like yours.
Mine's 30.
Looks good.
Trying to dial it in without a, I'll leave the bottom corner off Tim's just to bug him.
That's a logo from 2007.
Yeah, exactly. That is what I feel like. It's like, oh, you just do that and now you're aged 10 years. Anyways, I forgot what I was going to say. Something. Anyways. Oh, watching, edit. I do try and edit. I like editing live, showing my work, even if it's just like one person watching along. I think even just helping other people understand what goes on or why they would want to record a certain way or anything like that. Mm-hmm. It just always ends up taking me twice as long to edit because I end up talking through stuff, even if nobody's there, and then you get less done. But suffice to say, it's fun.
You're not on auto mode.
No, I need to like do that. I think it would be maybe if I just turn the camera off and ignore the chat, or ignore if there is any chat, and just like I'm working and you can watch, but I'm not going to talk back. Turn off my mic or whatever. But anyways, cool. Thanks, Tim, and good luck in the big city.
Thank you. We just got 2 apartment approvals while we were sitting here, so we have choices, which is good.
Nice. Good luck. We'll, I guess, anybody watching will be updated live as we record each week if there's a background change.
There'll be more boxes next week.
Yeah. Okay. We'll see you all. Thanks for watching. See you next time.